The Bennett family wasn't used to luxury. They were simple folks, always cherishing the smaller things in life. Their home was filled with memories, not valuables. So when Aunt Lorraine passed away and left them a grandiose, gilt-framed painting named Luna's Whisper, it was received with a mix of awe and bewilderment. The artwork was spellbinding, a beautiful moonlit forest landscape, drenched in silver and blue hues. The luminescent moon hung in the sky, casting its pale glow on a lone figure standing beside a tall, majestic tree. Every time you looked at it, you could swear you heard a soft lullaby caressing your ears. It felt alive. They hung it in the living room, its captivating aura adding an unexpected splendor to the otherwise modest decor. However, it didn't take long for Kathy to notice subtle changes in the painting. Initially, she attributed it to her imagination. The dark shape lurking far in the background seemed closer, and the tree appeared less lush than before. Maybe it was the lighting, or perhaps the angle she was looking at it. However, tragedy struck when Kathy's husband, Greg, lost his job. The company he'd dedicated 15 years to went bankrupt overnight. As they grappled with this unexpected blow, Kathy noticed the painting had transformed again. The dark figure was now discernibly closer, its shadowy form becoming more defined. The once vibrant tree now looked desolate and parched. Emily, their teen daughter, began to have nightmares. She dreamt of a shadowy figure whispering unspeakable horrors in her ear, always under the same hauntingly familiar moonlit tree. Waking up screaming became a nightly ritual, her sleep-deprived eyes echoing the terror she felt. Desperate for answers, Kathy turned to the internet. After hours of futile searches and rabbit holes, she stumbled upon a blog post titled "The Uncanny Aura of Luna's Whisper, More Than Meets the Eye." The article hinted at the painting's dark past, suggesting it might be more than just paint and canvas. That evening, the Bennett family sat in their living room, the painting staring down at them. With a deep breath, Kathy shared her findings. The room was filled with a heavy silence, interrupted only by the soft, ghostly whispers of Luna's Whisper. Armed with the unsettling knowledge from the article, Kathy decided to dig deeper into the painting's past. She learned that Luna's Whisper was the creation of an eccentric 19th century artist named Vladimir Kresnik. Famous not just for his art, Vladimir had a reputation for delving into the occult. Kathy's research led her to a local historian, Dr. Abigail Hartman, who had written extensively about artists from that era. Over a cup of tea, Abigail shared the chilling tale of Vladimir Kresnik. He was obsessed with the idea of trapping emotions, memories, even souls within his artworks, Dr. Hartman began. There were rumors that he had struck a deal with forces beyond comprehension to breathe life into his creations. One night, after unveiling Luna's Whisper, Vladimir disappeared. No one knows where he went or what happened to him. However, every family that had come into possession of the painting experienced tragedies and misfortunes. Kathy's heart raced as she listened, the gravity of their situation becoming increasingly apparent. She thanked Dr. Hartman and returned home, resolved to rid her family of the cursed artifact. But as she walked into her house, a cold shiver ran down her spine. The painting seemed to have transformed yet again. The shadowy figure now stood clear and ominous, its eyes fixed on the viewer, its intentions malevolent. The tree was completely barren, mirroring the bleak turn their lives had taken. As night fell, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The Bennett family huddled together, seeking strength in their unity. The figure in the painting seemed to mock them, its eerie presence dominating their home. They knew they had to act before it was too late. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a haunting darkness that the Bennett family now feared. Kathy, Greg, and Emily sat around the dining table, a collection of historical documents and printed articles sprawled out before them. The painting loomed ominously in the living room, as if eavesdropping on their conversation. "We need to do something about it." Kathy's voice was tinged with a fear she couldn't hide. "We need to get rid of it, burn it, bury it, I don't care. Just get it out of our lives." Emily's eyes shifted nervously to the painting, then back to her mother. But what if that makes it worse? What if it releases whatever is in there? Greg rubbed his temples, trying to process the events that had turned their lives upside down. "Look, I've been trying to rationalize this whole thing, but I can't. There's something wrong with that painting, something deeply disturbing, and it's affecting us." Kathy reached into her bag and took out a folded paper. "I've made an appointment to see an art historian and a spiritual medium tomorrow. I know it sounds desperate, but we need all the help we can get." "Maybe," Greg hesitated, "maybe we should also talk to a priest. I mean, if that thing is some kind of entity, maybe we need to consider an exorcism." Emily grimaced. "An exorcism? Are we in a horror movie?" Kathy looked at her. "Our life has become a horror movie. You're having nightmares, your dad lost his job, and we're all hearing whispers from a painting. We can't rule anything out." A sudden cold breeze blew through the house, making them all shiver. It was as if the painting, or whatever entity resided within it, had heard them and was responding. The family fell silent, each lost in thought, weighed down by the strain of their unspoken fears. In that moment, they heard it. A soft, haunting whisper, like a cold breath on the nape of their necks. "Luna!" It was coming from the painting, and this time, they all heard it. Emily broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tomorrow isn't soon enough." The gravity of the situation was now undeniable. They had a cursed object in their home, an entity that was gaining strength and influence. They needed to act before the ominous figure in the painting took another step closer, before the whispers became screams, before their lives unraveled any further. As the Bennett family went to bed that night, locking doors and saying silent prayers, they knew that the struggle was far from over. The figure in the painting seemed to smirk, its eyes glowing a malevolent red, and for the first time, it moved. Just a slight tilt of the head, almost imperceptible. But it was enough to fill their dreams with terror, enough to confirm that it was aware, and it was waiting. Kathy couldn't sleep. The haunting whispers of the painting echoed in her mind as she stared at the ceiling. She sighed and looked at Greg, who was also tossing and turning. Their eyes met, and they knew neither would find rest that night. "We need answers, and we need them now," Kathy whispered. Greg nodded. "I'll make some coffee. We've got a long day ahead." After a sleepless night, the Bennetts divided their day into two parts. Kathy would visit Dr. Sarah Hewitt, the art historian, while Greg and Emily would seek the advice of Father Michaels, a local priest known for his studies in theology and the paranormal. Kathy met Dr. Hewitt in her office, which was adorned with artworks from various periods. Dr. Hewitt examined photos of Luna's whisper with deepening concern. "This seems to be more than just paint and canvas," she said, her voice tinged with worry. "If what you say is true, you might be dealing with a talismanic object, a vessel that contains or channels spiritual energy." "Can it be neutralized?" Kathy asked, her desperation evident. Dr. Hewitt sighed. "I don't know, but you might try confronting it with its own history. Sometimes acknowledging the origin of such an object weakens its power. Find out how it was created, why, and most importantly, what it wants." Meanwhile, Greg and Emily met Father Michaels in the small, quaint chapel. After listening to their tale, the priest took a moment before speaking. "This appears to be a spiritual crisis, yes, but also a crisis of faith. The entity in the painting has taken advantage of vulnerabilities in your family's spiritual armor. "Can you perform an exorcism?" Greg asked. "I can bless the object and your home, but an exorcism requires authorization from the church, and that could take weeks, if not months." "We don't have that long," Emily chimed in, her voice shaky. Father Michaels nodded solemnly. "I understand. Come back this evening and I'll perform a blessing ritual. It's not an exorcism, but it might weaken the entity." The family reconvened at home, sharing their newfound information. As they discussed their next steps, Emily glanced at the painting and gasped. The figure was no longer alone. A new, smaller shadow stood next to it, holding its hand. "It's getting bolder," Emily choked out, tears streaming down her face. That night, armed with holy water and ancient prayers, Father Michaels performed the blessing ritual. The house was filled with an aura of sanctity, but as he approached the painting, the holy water sizzled and evaporated before it could touch the canvas. The room grew icy cold, and the figure in the painting grinned wickedly. Realizing that neither expert opinions nor religious interventions were effective, the Bennetts felt cornered. The pressure mounted as they found themselves waking up to increasingly tragic headlines. Kathy was horrified to learn that her sister had been in a car accident, mirroring a new element in the painting, a twisted vehicle in the background. Greg, equally concerned, suggested a new avenue. "We need to find the artist, or at least discover the origins of this painting. Maybe, as Dr. Hewitt said, knowing its history might give us a way to neutralize it." The family agreed to divide and conquer. Greg would go to the local archives and dig up anything he could find about the painting's artist or previous owners. Kathy and Emily would try to reach out to previous auction houses where the painting had been sold. As Greg scrolled through the microfiche at the local library, he stumbled upon an article from 1943. A family had mysteriously died in their home, and the crime scene photo caught his eye. In the background was Luna's Whisper. The caption mentioned an auction where the painting had been sold after the family's deaths. Greg jotted down the details and rushed home, hoping this new information might be the key they were looking for. Meanwhile, Kathy and Emily had less luck. Auction houses were tight-lipped about previous owners due to confidentiality. But one assistant did let slip that the painting was considered unlucky in art circles. Greg arrived home to share his news. "This painting has been around for at least 80 years, and it has been a part of at least one other family's tragedy." Kathy looked at the article and felt a chill. "Do you think we're cursed?" "I don't know," Greg sighed, "but we need to figure out how to end this, and fast." The family decided their next course of action had to be a deep dive into the history of the artist, hoping to find some clue about how to neutralize the painting's power. As they debated how to proceed, Emily heard a soft whisper, "It's coming." She turned around to see the painting had changed once more. The shadowy figure had taken another step forward, and the smaller figure beside it seemed to be disintegrating, particle by particle. "We don't have much time," Emily warned, her voice tinged with an unspeakable dread. "We really don't." Time was running out, and the family knew it. That night, they all huddled in the living room, unable to sleep, and kept an anxious eye on Luna's Whisper. "I found something," Greg announced, breaking the tense silence. He had been scouring the internet for hours, diving into art forums and obscure blogs. The artist is Harold Dufresne. He was known for his avant-garde approach and his interest in occult practices. He died under mysterious circumstances, and most of his works were lost or destroyed. "Except for this one," Kathy added, eyeing the painting nervously. "Exactly. I also found that Dufresne was associated with a particular sect that believed in imbuing art with life essence." Kathy's eyes widened. You mean the painting is alive? In a way, yes. And there's more. Dufresne was obsessed with lunar cycles. He believed that the moon's phases could amplify magical energies. Emily interjected, "That explains Luna's whisper and why the figure seems to move forward as the moon waxes." "So, what do we do?" Kathy asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "We need to destroy it during the waning phase of the moon, when its power is at its weakest." "That's in 2 days," Greg explained. Emily looked back at the painting. The shadow figure was almost at the foreground, and the smaller figure was now barely more than a scattering of pixels. She thought of her aunt, of the family tragedies that seemed to keep mounting, and felt a rising sense of panic. "We may not have 2 days. We have to try," Greg affirmed. "It's the only lead we have." The 2 days felt like an eternity. The Bennetts watched in horror as the news reported more accidents and tragedies affecting their extended family and close friends. The painting, meanwhile, continued to evolve. The shadowy figure was now almost out of the frame, and the smaller figure had all but disappeared. Finally, the night of the waning moon arrived. Greg had prepared a ritual based on his research, combining elements of folklore, pagan practices, and modern science. They decided to carry it out in the basement to contain whatever energy might be unleashed. Taking all necessary precautions, they laid the painting flat on a table surrounded by a circle of salt and candles. Holding hands, they began to chant an incantation Greg had found in an ancient grimoire. As they chanted, the painting started to ripple as if its canvas were made of liquid. The room grew colder, and they heard the distant sound of whispers echoing off the walls. "Do it now!" Greg yelled, signaling Kathy to cut the painting using a blade they had coated with a mixture of salt and holy water. Kathy slashed the blade across the painting, and as she did, a piercing scream filled the air, sending a shockwave throughout the room that extinguished all the candles. Then, silence. For a moment they all stood in the dark basement, catching their breath, too frightened to speak. Greg finally mustered the courage to turn on the lights. The painting was destroyed, the canvas slashed and burnt around the edges. The shadowy figure and the other elements were gone, leaving only smears of color. It took days to confirm that the chain of tragedies had ceased. Kathy's sister miraculously recovered from her injuries. Their friends and extended family reported a series of fortunate events. However, things were not the same. Emily withdrew from her social life, spending more time alone in her room. Greg and Kathy, too, felt the weight of what they had been through. They moved the painting's remains to a storage unit, unwilling to keep it, but also unable to let go entirely. Months later, they found a new painting to hang in their living room, a beautiful landscape that filled the room with warmth. Yet they couldn't shake off the nagging feeling whenever they looked at it, as if expecting the figures in this new artwork to start moving. Sometimes, in the dead of the night, Emily would wake up, thinking she heard whispers. She would then remember that Luna's whisper was locked away, powerless. Still, she couldn't help but wonder, as she struggled to fall back asleep, what had become of the shadowy figure that had almost stepped out into their world. The painting was gone, but the fear it instilled lived on. Before you go double-checking your locks and peering into dark corners, do us a little favor that won't cost you a dime, but keeps our channel alive. Hit that like button if these stories sent shivers down your spine. It helps us know that we're delivering the kinds of scares you crave. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. What was the most terrifying moment for you? Do you have a real-life horror story of your own? Drop your tale in the comments below, and who knows, your story might be the one that haunts our next episode. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell. That way you'll never miss a chance to tremble in fear with each new story we bring to your screen. Thank you for spending your time with us tonight on Shadowy Screams TV. Remember, the next time you hear something go bump in the night, it might just be one of our stories coming to life. Until next time, sleep tight, or at least try to.